Good morning, everybody. Today we're taking a look at 1 Samuel chapter number 30. We see here this chapter is David has a conflict with the Amalekites. You see, David gets to Ziklag and he sees that the Amalekites have been there and have raided. They have burned the city down. There wasn't anything left, and they took all of the people. They took all of the livestock. They took everything as spoil. And David was grieved, and you see, as you continue to read, you'll see that David inquired to the Lord, "What shall I do?" And the Lord said, "Go ahead, you shall recover all of it." So David did. David took his men and went and recovered all of it, and even some extra that David went and dispersed to some of the other places in Israel. So it is a good little story of strength. But what I really want to take a look at is verse number 6. It says, "Now David was greatly distressed." This is when he first comes into Ziklag. So David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and his daughters. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. You see, this is right when David came into Ziklag and saw all this stuff, and they were really, David wasn't there to protect them or anything. So the people were going to stone him for whatever reason. But you see that the people were grieved, and in that grief, I'm sure David grieved too. And David, his 2 wives were gone too. They had been taken captive. So, but you see that the end of that verse says, "But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God." And so what did David do? What does that mean, you strengthen yourself in the Lord? So I'm going to talk about just 3 different ways to help strengthen yourself in the Lord when you come into times of grief, when you come into times of trouble, when you come into times of just needing some strength from the Lord. I'm going to talk about 3 different things. First thing is the armor of God, listed in Ephesians 6. The Apostle Paul wrote about it. Okay, this is the armor of God, which is made to help strengthen the body. God has given that to us, all of it: the helmet of salvation, breastplate of righteousness, the gospel of peace that you walk in. This is all made to help give us a strength to withstand against the enemy and against difficult times. We also see, not added to that, is his word and his promises. You see, we need to know, we need to stand on, we need to have faith in his word and his promises. And if we don't, we can't gather our strength from the Lord. If we don't know what that is, we don't know what that looks like. If we have not been studying our word, how do we know what to have faith in, and how do we know what to stand on? If we don't study his word, studying his word and having faith on that, and standing on that helps strengthen us in the Lord. And the last one I want to talk about, which is what you saw David do in this reading, in this chapter, is David went to the Lord in times of trouble. This is something that we need to do. We need to go to the Lord in our times of trouble. Recently I had to officiate the memorial of my mother, and this was the first official use of a minister's license for me, and this was not easy. And I'll tell you, about 15 minutes before the service began, I walked into, after setting everything up, and I walked into the sanctuary, and I saw everything set up, and the music was playing, the atmosphere was going, and it was very touching. It was really, really just a very emotional time for me, and I began weeping and crying there, and in a few minutes, I had to pick up a microphone and officiate this service, and so I found myself, I said I needed to get alone for a minute with God. And I went into a room that was unoccupied, closed the door, and I just cried out to God. I said, "Lord, I can't do this. I said, I need you. I need your help. I need, God, I need your strength. And I cried out to the Lord, and I let him have my emotion. I let him have my tears. And I didn't hold back, and I gave it to him. And just poured out my heart that I needed him. And he began to comfort me. And he really did. And he touched me. And I tell you, I got to do the service. And not only did I get to do it, he was there with me, just holding me up the entire time. I mean, it was him. It was his hand keeping me up. It was his hand keeping me from breaking down and just going into a full morning state. And it was him. And he strengthened me tremendously. And in times of need, in times of trouble, he'll do it for you. But you gotta cry out to him. So, guys and girls, I hope you have a super, super day. That, by the way, that message is on my Facebook. It's a public profile. You're welcome to watch it. It was a good message on grief. So please go ahead and watch it. I love you all. Have a super, super day.